To break away from V talking about Japanese schoolgirls selling their pennies for some reason, and then I kind of got the image in my mind of other YouTube characters possibly selling their undergarments. Maybe V, maybe Cecil. I don't know. I'm sure that we go for top billing. Um, I came across these comic books, and these are known as pretty decent comic books, which is a strange thing to have to mention in the current year. Aren't most comic books, the person who doesn't read comic books would probably suspect, aren't most comic books good comic books? No, no, they're not. That's not how comic books work anymore, which is really weird. Really weird for people who are used to reading comics from the 80s and earlier, 60s, 70s, 80s were very good years. So I found these half dozen books that were good, and then I found one bad book, and well, let me get through this. Boba Fett, your favorite Mandalorian in his great armor, and I read in some Star Wars interview that he was only in the first trilogy for like 10 minutes or something. I kind of remember him in Empire when I think Darth Vader said to him, "No disintegrations," something like that, and he was telling him not to kill Han Solo. He needed the body in one piece or something like that, and he was among a bunch of other bounty hunters, and it was just a really brief scene, and they didn't really do much. They were just lined up and talking. And in Return of the Jedi, he comes out on the slave ship, and he gets his ass kicked by everyone. He goes bouncing off the ship, and he gets tossed into the pit. The kind of, I think of it as like this giant kind of thing with teeth. I'll let you use your imagination. I'm not sure what they were going with when they created that monster to digest him for 1,000 years. And I compared this character to the character in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, the woman in the silver armor who was on the HBO show. She's like 6 feet tall, a little blonde haircut, and she wore the Captain Fantasia armor. And I guess they included that because they were trying to sell toys, but nobody cares about the Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, and nobody cares about the silver stormtrooper, the lady. Nobody cares. And she was in the film for quite a bit more than Boba Fett was in his trilogy. And for some reason, he sold really well, and he got his ass kicked repeatedly. Kind of strange how he sold and she didn't. Anyway, this Luke Skywalker, Age of Rebellion is about half dozen. Lando Calrissian, one of the best characters in the original trilogy. Jabba the Hutt, this was a good story because it had a bunch of double crosses, and it took you right into his pit, his abode about the time of the Return of the Jedi, and it really feels like the Return of the Jedi film. Has a kind of that dusty, murky, dangerous currents of things are about to happen, and the story does a pretty good job. That is an unfortunate smirk. What were you thinking when you drew that? I don't know, but otherwise, other than the silly smile, it's a good composition. I like the ship in the background. Grand Moff Tarkin, very good. Finn, very good story. Now this is the only story that fell flat, which is a shame because Princess Leia is everyone who saw the trilogy really liked Princess Leia, and even in the books and the comic books, she's a great character. It's a shame that this is the worst story, and the reason it's the worst story is because she's a female, and comic book artists and writers and editors and publishers nowadays can't write female characters. They have to write them. I know Mary Sue is an overused term, but not when it's used accurately. They can't write female characters as multifaceted, having problems, having a story arc, having problems and overcoming those problems, having failures and overcoming those failures by learning from failures. 30 years ago, they could have wrote this story, and it would have been a great story. Nowadays, you can't. You simply cannot. They simply cannot write a female character. And when you write a character that doesn't have any faults, as you'll see in the story, it is very dull and flat and predictable. And even a child will look at the story, and after a while, the child will start to put the story down because you kind of know that the character's not gonna ever fail, and that gets old. You have to be a very, very young child for that not to get old. And I mean, like, very young. Anyway, so the story opens up. It opens strong because it has an action shot of the ship flying through hyperspace. That's excellent. Then it shows the gear. That's fine, but that's a good shot. Remember, I think it was in The New Hope, when the opening scene was one ship firing on another ship as the other ship was trying to flee, and it was a great opening scene. And they compared it to the prequel trilogies, where they're going on a mission to discuss diplomacy or some stupid. Just prequels are such a disappointment. Okay, she's checking her gear. She's missing her lover, Han Solo. I guess I don't know if it's her lover, but it's implied. She's missing her lover. She goes to his bedroom. Sniffs his pillow like you do when you really, really miss somebody, or you're just you're so into them, you just want the smell of them. As weird as that sounds. Turns out that it's the Wookiee's pillow. Wow, it was pretty funny. I miss him too, Chewie. Don't worry, we're gonna get him no matter what. Good story. And it was funny. Scruffy-headed nerf herder or whatever. Okay, you go to the forest, and you have the cool character, Lando. In the original trilogy, Lando and Han Solo were the cool characters. They weren't the comic relief. They could probably do some little bit of comedy, but they weren't. They played a certain role. They were the guys the kids wanted to be. They were cool where Luke wasn't cool. Luke was kind of a more of a religious almost character who was on a mission. Han and Lando were the lovable rogues. So they have to maintain that fiction of being lovable rogues. I mean, hip, slick, and cool, and they're not right all the time. They can screw up, but you can't do certain things to them and have the character maintain its strength. Okay, so you have him do a pratfall down a hill. Whoa! I'm Lando and I'm falling down a hill. Whoops-a-daisy. That's kind of weak. Okay, character shows up, speaking some foreign language with some kind of stunner stick. He reaches for his gun. She kicks the gun out of his hand. Fair enough. He jumps for her, and she hits him in the head with her stick. His stunner stick. Obviously, you know who the character is. It's no surprise. He says, "It's good to see you again. Didn't know you were such an accomplished hand-to-hand fighter." What he's basically saying is, yes, you're better than me. Even though she's probably 5'4" and he's probably 6'1", healthy, strong young man, and she's, 130-pound beautiful woman. Of course, it's Princess Leia. You learn a lot of things as the Princess of Alderaan. Leia, where are you? But why did she hit him in the head with a club? Kicking the gun out of the hand, sure, fair enough. She hit him in the head. You don't do that to your characters. This is not how character development works. Because, okay, the protagonist usually has to have a clear moral superiority. I know that kind of sounds funny, but when you're writing simple stories, it's easier to write black and whites than it is to write gray. And this isn't even a shade of gray. This is a black mark on her character. Hitting someone in the head, who's her friend, when all she would have had to do was just identify herself. Why didn't she just pull her helmet off, tell Lando who she was? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Okay, so they're going through their mission. They have to rescue Chewbacca, or I think it's Chewbacca, from somebody. It doesn't matter. And they're talking about rescuing Chewbacca, all well and good, and yet 5'4" Princess Leia and 6'1" Lando, she says that she has to go down to rescue him. Get in focus. And he has to stay behind. even though he's a lovable rogue who's been tramping about the galaxy his whole life, playing cards in dangerous. My point is, he's very, very skilled, and he's not. He's not going to sit back. She says, "I disarmed you on my own just now because you're just a little punk bitch." That's Lando. You can't do that to Lando. You're still a princess. You go down there, and they'll sniff you out in a second. If I can't fool them, I won't be able to fool Jabba and save Han. Okay, fair enough. That adds to the plot development of Return of the Jedi. But realistically, if this was made around the time of around the time of the originals from 77 to 81 or whatever, you would be realistic, and you would have the beautiful girl go down there and be the decoy, because she's the beautiful girl, but she's not the accomplished fighter that Lando would be. It violates the willing suspension of disbelief, verisimilitude. It doesn't have the appearance of truth when you have this beautiful young lady kicking ass, and you have this strong young man tied up with his hands behind his back as a decoy. And reading this for like the second or third time now, it makes less and less sense to have this big strong guy tied up while she does all the fighting, and then she kicks him in the head again. It's part of their decoy. It's part of their con. But no, you don't kick. This doesn't. This just it violates the story. It takes you right out of the story. She's literally doing everything. He's tied up like her little bondage bottom. She could just get a strap on out and just go to town on him. She might as well. That's how she's treating him. Sorry, Lando. You were okay. He's tied up. He says, "This is too much. Cut me loose and give me a gun. Shut up before you blow my cover." Are you kidding me? No, I don't know who wrote. Pack wrote this, I think. This is a mistake. You're making a mistake when you write like this. She continues to just beat the hell out of everyone. She gets the drop on everyone. She's a Mary Sue. This is a Mary Sue character, an overpowered character with very few flaws. Now, okay, her name's on the book. She's got to be the big hero, but you have to be realistic about it. And the thing is, if they use her as, oh God, they kicked him in the head again. If they use her as a decoy and they teamed up to pull some kind of trick on the bad guys, it would be more realistic. But the 12 angry sociopaths on Twitter would have a problem with it. Have a problem with the big strong Lando acting like a big strong young man, and having the petite Princess Leia. This doesn't make any sense. She's kicking him in the head repeatedly. Why are you doing this? What is your agenda when you do this kind of stuff? Do you really hate men so much? Or I know the writer personally doesn't hate men, but the writer wants to foment discord among the sexes. Anyway, he says, "Tell me about it, just a little to the left, and almost too convincing, princess," when she shot next to him or something. She says, "If that's what it really took to save Han, it would have been, I'd have been a lot more convincing than that. I'm not so sure she's kidding, Chewie, but I kind of like it. Better watch out for this one. She might have a little scoundrel in her after all. I kind of like it. I kind of like being treated like just a total bitch. No, you can't treat your characters like this. This is taking the characters and turning them on their head, but it's not to their benefit. Anyway, this was the more I looked through this, I realized how bad it was. When I first read it, I thought it was kind of fun, but no, that's not fun at all. That was just garbage. But the rest of these are fun. So if you want to look at a good comic book, and I know good comic book reviews are not very popular because people like people like roastings. But the rest of these were a lot of fun. So check them out. Anyway, I'll leave a comment, like, and subscribe.